Subject 901, Jessica, from the creepypasta Jessica. I love Pokemon. Always have, always will. Not just the game, but the characters themselves. When I was about 6, my dad bought me my first ever game console, a yellow Game Boy Color console with a copy of Pokemon Yellow. I was overjoyed. I had been a hardcore Pokemon fan ever since I started watching the TV show with my brother and some friends, and every time I would start trying to reenact some Pokemon, due to my young age and naive nature, I didn't know it was just a kid's show and a game. My brother was with me with his own colorless Game Boy, the see-through one that shows all the funky machinery inside of it. I had a copy of Pokemon Blue. I would have gotten red, but they were out of stock. My brother began his game along with me in the car on the way to grandmother's house, and we were both instantly hooked. I fell in love with Pikachu instantly, and the mind of at a naive young age made me call it after a friend of ours who had recently moved, a very close friend of ours. I named the Pikachu Jessica as a tribute to her. I got to Pewter City and had a Butterfree and a Pidgey already, similar to Ash in the cartoon. I had to turn it off and beg my dad to buy me new batteries to keep playing, but it was safe to say I was hooked. After a time, my Pikachu grew stronger. It changed, expanding itself and now replacing Butterfree and Pidgeotto with a Sandslash and Gorogoro. A Dragonite traded to me for my brother, as well as the two of them. My team also added in a Charmander, a Squirtle, a Bulbasaur. You get during the game. However, one Pokemon never changed. Jessica. She remained on my team throughout the game. I didn't mind she was a little weaker than my other Pokemon because she wasn't evolved. She held a special place in my heart. Somehow, no matter how many times my brother tried to convince me to evolve her into a Raichu, which was impossible in my game, by trading her to him, I never did it. I liked Jessica the way she was, and I kept training her alongside my other Pokemon and hearing that cute Pika as she went into battle, and the little animations when I spoke to her. In fact, she was the first Pokemon I ever had to reach level 100. My first ever top level Pokemon. The first Pokemon I had ever gotten. My dad had told me I was too into the game, but I saw it differently. I saw Jessica as more than just pixels and bytes in a video game. I saw her as a close friend, a companion, and someone who would cheer me up when I was down with her Pika, Pika, every time I pressed the A button on her. In a sense, I began to love Jessica like a friend, as weird as it sounded. Soon, Pokemon Gold and Silver came out. I traded my yellow team to my silver version and trained on that one instead, even getting them all to level 102. Jessica still remained at the head of my party, along with my yellow team and my new Pokemon Silver team. I remember watching the anime in Johto, Ash saying that he valued all of his Pokemon and treated them like family. I valued my Pokemon in the same way, and Jessica felt like a little sister I'd never had. My brother had a tendency of restarting his game when he got bored. I even got Pokemon Red to try and match him. We even had races together. He and I battled occasionally, and he often won, but he could never match up to my Pokemon Yellow team. One day, however, one of our younger friends came around and messed up my game without me knowing. He didn't erase it, but he accidentally evolved Jessica into a Raichu. Since it was on my new Crystal version, she couldn't refuse like she did in Yellow. I felt gutted and a little sad. And that some of my past died. To relieve some nostalgic moments, although Jessica wasn't following me around anymore, I treated her like the Pikachu I always had. I even spoke to my game a few times, once or twice. I thought she responded me if I felt happy. Raichu's cry was normal and tough. If I felt sad, it slowed down a little and saddened. It might have been just me, but oh well. When Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire came out, I was crushed when I found out I couldn't train my Gen 1 and 2 Pokemon to them. I felt incredibly sad and finally put down my Pokemon Yellow to pick up a Pokemon Ruby. So what if the American and British Game Boy, if it was an American on a British Game Boy Advance, I began to play and was instantly hooked. I made a new team, but every now and again I went back to my old game. Jessica still made me come back to Yellow, and her Pikachu on the front page right made me happy to see her again. Unfortunately, my life outside of video games was becoming less fortunate. My mother was getting sick and slowly dying of cancer. The doctors tried everything they could fought to keep her alive, but everyone knows the end was coming. Except me. I was so naive, I didn't even understand the half of what was going on. I knew my mom was ill, but then the inevitable happened and it finally smacked me in my face. I closed myself to reality, playing games and forcing everyone away from me. My thoughts were so misguided and far-fetched. My mind was being distorted. I was doing incredibly badly on my games, even if I was trying to use them as a failsafe. Ruby was no fun anymore, and most of my other games were just plain rubbish. Super Smash Bros. Melee kept me entertained for a while, but it got dull. The only thing left for me now was Yellow. Somehow, as a failsafe, Jessica and Yellow actually worked. She seemed to cheer me up as a Raichu, and her tough battle cry made me keep going forward. I met a girl online and began to fall in love with her. She helped me through several hard times, and was also a great Pokemon fan. I got Pearl soon after and began to play that, and getting hints and tips from my new friends, who will be known as S to protect her identity, and making a new team, buying Pokemon Battle Revolution soon after and battling her on it occasionally. Everything was getting back together until one fateful event, one that would, to me, unknowingly set off a whole chain reaction. I had come home from school incredibly angry. People at school had been bullying me. A friend had turned on me and seriously upset me. In a blind rage, I stormed into my room and began to throw things around. My bag, books, drawers, anything that wasn't secure. Eventually I calmed down and began to tidy up, removing things from a pile I made of heavy objects being thrown. I heard it all crunching and cracking noise. Digging everything away, I found something that it made my anger dissipated into nothing. There, crushed at the bottom of the pile, there was a yellow cartridge for a Game Boy Color game. I had only one yellow color game, and that was the game I started with. Yellow. I cried. I think I really cried for quite some time. I don't know, it was kind of blurry. Just holding the smashed bits of my game to my chest. No more nostalgic battles with the Elite Four. No more battles with my rivals. No more Jessica. Pikachu or Raichu I had grown to love as a good friend, and almost as a sister. I felt bad and guilty, but even still, I had other Pokemon games. I had Pearl with an amazing team on it, and soon I was getting Platinum. Would I really miss Pokemon game with about 7 or 8 years old? I wish I had paid more attention, and I was far too blind and naive. I began to play Pearl more frequently, challenging S to battles as well as my friends. I moved to a new school and got Platinum, but my depression kept coming back to haunt me. My brother, too, was suffering from depression from the death of our mother. Neither of us were getting any better. Well, I was stable thanks to S, who had now become my girlfriend, and my brother was worse off. My brother wasn't even going to school anymore. He had lost interest in Pokemon and had gone to other fandoms, but I stayed loyal. I am still, to this very day, the #1 Pokemon fan in my school. However, when I played Pokemon games, sometimes lingered in the back of my mind something that I had forgotten, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Whatever it was, I seemed to get this feeling whenever I saw a member of the Chew family in the anime or games. It was odd and a little creepy. A year and a half later, approximately 6 months ago from today, another tragedy struck. My brother, who had slowly been sinking lower and lower into depression, died in his flat suddenly. No one told me anything about what was happened, but it was enough. My depression came back like a storm and smacked me. A few days later, due to going back to school, I was rummaging through old things that would bring back memories of my brother. Digging in a box, I found a cracked object, pulling it out. I was surprised to see it was my old Pokemon Yellow cartridge. There was a large chunk of it missing from the front, and a lot of nuts and bolts inside of it were loosened and tipped all over the bottom of the box. I took all of them and attempted to find the lost piece of the cover, but to no avail. Finally giving up, I placed it back into the box and put it away. As I did, a name flashed into my mind and made me pause. Jessica. Where had I heard that name before? I couldn't remember. I stuffed it back under my computer desk and left for school. Things were going very well. After my brother's death, my mind was going wrong. I kept hearing voices in my head. I was diagnosed with multiple personality disorder. Pokemon Heart Gold, my most recent game, along with S and 2 friends, known to be P and R. Those names are to keep their identity safe, were the only things that are keeping me sane. I decided to get black because of the look of the white dragon. Please don't correct me if I get this wrong. I'm not that good at Pokemon names. Reshiram. He said that he would get white, and we would race to see who could beat the game first, just like me and my brother would have done. Soon the game came, and we went instantly to playing it. Within 3 days, he had 7 badges and a full team. My love of Pokemon would never die, and P was left in the dust with only 4 badges. Finally beating the game and getting the transfer machine, I borrowed P's DS and began to scroll through some Pokemon to trade through for my Heart Gold. From my Heart Gold, I wanted to replace Lightning, my Zebstrika, and Wildfire, my Sumseer, because they were far too weak. Looking through, I came across a Pikachu, and I'd gotten the Yellow Forest Pokewalker run. It was female, and had a modest nature, and used Surf, Volt Tackle, and 2 other moves I can't remember. Perfect! As a tradition of mine, I always named my Pokemon. This helped me put characteristics into them, and I had done ever since I could remember. My Heart Gold file was loaded, and I took the Pikachu into the Reginnator. Pikachu seemed like the only one really being worthy on my team. I decided to replace Sumseer with an Unova Pokemon, as I went to nickname her. I had a discussion with the other 2 voices in my head asking what to call her. As we were talking, my stylus tapped absent-mindedly on the screen without me realizing. As I came back to focus from the conversation with my other 2 counterparts, I realized my dawdling had made me press enter. I rolled my eyes and looked at the probably silly name I had made. Congratulations. From now on, this Pokemon will be known as Jessica. Jessica? My eyes widened as I recognized the name from somewhere. Where, I didn't remember, but it seemed to fit. Everything from there went smoothly. We decided to stick that name and sent Jessica into my black and played the weird capture game thingy. It took me 2 tries to do it, but I finally got my Pokemon to black. Jessica was shifted to the front of my party. I began to train her. Things were going as planned. The Lucky Egg and XP point up. Power 1 I was using from my C gear working great. I changed her moveset a bit more special oriented. She had a modest nature and kept on training. Things were getting strange about 30 minutes after she was in the game. I had started training Jessica without an XP boost and gotten her to level 50. Level 50 was the level I planned to evolve her into a Raichu. I pressed A twice to get rid of the stats, and then a third time to get rid of the winning battle message. However, rather than the screen going back to normal, it stayed black for a few seconds. Thinking my game had crashed, I pressed the A button once or twice. A black message box appeared on screen, as if I had received an item, but the text was going slowly, and what was displayed for me made me frown. Remember me? I blinked. I didn't know what that was about. The text box had vanished, and the screen returned to normal. I guess it was just because of some odd glitch or for an event. Maybe a joke, since Pikachu was the main Pokemon in the first games. Chuckling a little at the possible gag, I went back to my pack and took a Thunderstone, and I was going to click on Jessica. However, rather than the page being replaced by Jessica evolving, a text appeared. This time, the text moving at normal speed. Jessica refused to take the stone, with an exclamation point! Refusing? I was confused. A Pokemon had never done that to me, except once. Maybe it was a gag again. This to an old Pokemon game. Sighing, I closed the bag and began to walk around a bit more, training Jessica again. Jessica raised a few more levels until she was level 60. I tried the Thunderstone again. Again, Jessica refused, but this time, as I closed the bag, the message appeared. Black text box. Slow white writing like before. It's not going to work. Now do you remember me? This was starting to creep me out. I saved my game and checked Jessica's stats. On the status screen, her stats seemed normal. Level 60, modest nature, holding a lucky egg, female. But something was different. It took me a few seconds to notice what it was. The Pokemon sprite usually moves on the status screen, but Jessica's was unmoving. Pikachu just sat there, staring intently at the screen. She did not look happy like all the other Pikachu did. In fact, she looked angry. Her head was crouched a little and her eyes were narrow, her cheeks sparkling occasionally. She hadn't been like this since when I first got her. Worried that it could be Pokerus or some form of equivalent, I took her to the Pokemon Center to see if that little message saying, you have Pokerus came up. When I spoke to Nurse Joy, she healed my Pokemon and began to say something else. What she said was wasn't what I was expecting. Oh my! It appears that your Jessica isn't very pleased with you. Did you do something to upset it? You should take better care of your Pokemon. I read the screen over and over, trying to understand what I had done wrong. Was this all a side effect of some glitch involving Pikachus and Thunderstones? Alarm bells were going off in my head. My other two voices were screaming at me to be careful. I wanted to get Jessica up to a higher battle and battle the champion and my friend. So I began to train her again. She reached level 65, and I checked back up on her sprite. Jessica's sprite had gone back to normal, but something was different. Whereas a Pikachu sprite normally bounced, Jessica's did not, and she seemed to be looking at me, her eyes locking into mine, the detailed brown eyes filling out with emotion I never knew were flared with emotion. I never knew could be seen in a game. Hatred. anger, resentment, sorrow. They were not happy eyes. As I closed the status page, another message flashed up. You liar, cruel, heartless killer. Killer? I stared at the screen. Now I knew something was wrong. I grabbed my DS and hurried upstairs in my school to find P and R. Both of them were in the upstairs lounge. I showed them the screen, but told them to listen to me. But the message would be replaced with Jessica's stats. I told them to listen to me and begged me to understand. The two of them were both talking about something else, so they had no time to pay attention to me. I thought I was going nuts and resigned myself to possibly thinking they thought I was going nuts, and I resigned to thinking to that too. I headed back downstairs to my room, continuing training. As soon as I opened my DS again, words, however, at the bottom of the screen were slightly normal than text box. These words were worrying. However, since it was still black text box, but the words themselves were blood red, and a different style of writing, much more blocky and sharp with round edges of the newer writing. You kept me close. We were best friends. Then you broke me, killed me, and then discarded me. I will never die. I'm too close to your heart. Jessica's sprite appeared on the screen, but it was different. Instead of a happy bouncing Pikachu, her arms were folded, her ears drooping downwards. Her eyes narrowed. Her body had turned so it was facing the screen directly. That was when I really understood. She wasn't talking to the character at all. She was talking to me. Jessica, I whispered, staring at her quietly. The Jessica sprite nodded angrily, and his mouth began to move silently as words appeared on the screen. The same blood-red digital writing. I thought you cared. I thought you really cared. Wasn't I special to you, Cameron? Wasn't I your best friend? A yes-no option selection box appeared. I lingered, memories slowly beginning to hit my head as the two voices in my head remained silent, probably just as shocked as I was. Fingers trembling, I selected yes. Jessica nodded on screen before her tail flickered and her mouth began to move again. Yes, we were partners, you and I. We took down Team Rocket together. We conquered Kanto, Johto, and even Red together. I thought you cared. But I was wrong. You let the rage get the better of you and snapped me like a twig. Crushed me as well as my heart. You killed me, you murderer, Cameron. No! I cried, not realizing what I was talking aloud. Jessica, I'm sorry, I really am. I could feel tears beginning to stream down my face. You've got it all wrong. There was a silence from the screen before I suddenly heard Pika from the speakers. I looked at the screen as she had turned her back on me and began to walk away. I shook my head and frantically pressed the A button to try to do something. All I got was the swish of her lightning bolt tail as she faded out. The screen returned to normal, and black, the character, was facing Pikachu's sprite at the top of some steps. I guess this was Jessica, and her little Pikachu block looked at black before another text box appeared. At the top of Celestial Tower, I will wait for you. With that, the screen flashed black, and then back to normal. Things were wrong, though. The music had stopped playing. Black seemed to move slightly slower than normal. When I checked my party Pokemon, the first thing I noticed was Jessica was no longer in my party. The first base was replaced by my starter, Wish, my Starmount. Looking over my Pokemon, I noticed other things. Their cries were not sounded. Their sprites were frozen. The sprites themselves were almost done in a certain monochrome colors, yellow, red, blue, and whatnot, as well as done in large, blocky pixels, just like the Pokemon Yellow sprites. Just like it. Everything suddenly hit me. Jessica, my old team, the nostalgia, and finally, what happened to the cartridge. without another word in real life or in game, I used my trusty Sigilith, or my high node, to fly to Mystralian City and headed towards the Celestial Tower. The music refused to play. I was in too much torment with myself to care. Two voices in my head were trying to reassure me that there was some kind of nightmare, but I knew it was all happening. It was all so real, and my throat was incredibly dry. Tears ran down my face as I entered the tower of deceased Pokemon. Pokemon Tower. As soon as I entered, the atmosphere was different from outside. The room was darker than normal, and there wasn't anybody there. There was a forlorn silence, but faintly music was playing. I began to ascend the spiral staircase, and the music got louder with every floor I raised. Each floor was how it should be, but much darker and with no trainers or wild Pokemon. The graves were painted black on the final staircase. I saw Cameron used rage, Jessica died, in block red capital letters spiraling up the stairs. One letter on each step. Finally, I reached the top and surprisingly found everyone there. All the trainers from the tower, the gym leaders, the Elite Four, Belle, Charon, and Alder. They were all here, looking towards the main steps and said what shocked me, and what made my throat dry out even more, and fresh tears welled up in my eyes. Belle. Cameron, how could you do such a thing? Sharon, I looked up to you. How could you betray me? Adler, this is unforgivable. But maybe she will. You said you wanted people in Pokemon to live in peace. Then why did you... As I rose up a final few steps, Belle, Sharon, and an Alder would follow, blocking the way out. I went forward and stopped. There, standing in front of the bell, not Belle without the E, was an undeniably a Raichu sprite. The Raichu rang the bell. The sounds, eerie music, which I now recognized as the 8-bit Lavender Town from Pokemon Yellow. The music suddenly stopped, and another text bubble appeared, black, with white writing. You came, Cameron. I did. I whispered quietly to the screen, sniffing as I stared at it. The Raichu sprite turned around and took a few steps towards black, and stopping only 1 or 2 steps. Do you know I wanted to call you here? There was a yes-no box appeared again. I pressed yes with shaking thumbs, and the Raichu sprite shook its head in response. No, you don't. Don't lie. I called you here so you can see what you did to me. The sprite took a final step towards black, and the screen fuzzed out. A larger sprite, placing most of the screen where when in sometimes talked. What I saw, however, almost made me sick. It was Raichu, but no Raichu I was ever seen. The creature's ears was flattened to its skull, a huge gash leading from one ear to the other across the forehead. Blood-stained fur was shown all the way down its face, past its sorrowful eyes and scratched cheeks. Its arms hung limply by its side, and its tail drooped limply over its shoulder. A lightning bolt at the tip had a large chunk ripped out of it. Raichu's mouth had dried red paint around its lips. Alright, I'll say it, blood. And some still dribbling around the corner of its mouth. But it was the main part of Raichu that terrified me, the torso. Right where the chest was, the abdomen and stomach area right where its chest was, the abdomen and stomach area of Rachel 2 was a gaping wound. Inside could be seen intestines, bones, cracked ribs, and with with an insane amounts of blood dripping from it, covered with the white belly fur, staining it red. I could see its heart, and with a sickening turn off of my stomach, I saw it beating feebly in the shattered rib cage. Panicking, I pressed the A button repeatedly to try to get the image away from the screen. Instead, a text box appeared, with digital in red writing, just like the blood coming from Rachel. What's wrong, Cameron? Can't you stomach what you did to me, your closest friend, the one who you mercilessly killed? I'm sorry! I screamed at the screen, staring at Rachel's face. I'm sorry! With that, I crumpled over on my screen and sobbed. Jessica, it was an accident. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean to do anything to you. You're still my Pokemon. You're still my friend. None of this was meant to happen, Jess. Don't hate me. It was all a stupid accident. I cried for a solid few minutes before finally looking at the screen. Jessica had gone, and the overworld Raichu sprite was simply standing there, looking at Black. Nothing was said for a moment, and I simply stared at the screen. Finally, a text box appeared. Was it truly an accident? A yes/no box appeared. I pressed yes. There was another pause. The Raichu sprite turned around and walked back before another text box appeared. Do you regret what you did? Another yes/no box. I frantically pressed yes, more tears making their way down my face. There was another pause before Jessica finally turned around and staring at Black. Jessica believes you. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I saw the Raichu sprite walk over back to Black. The screen flashed up with a gruesome Raichu sprite again, but this time the sorrowful eyes were replaced with soft ones. A small, weak smile on his face. Do you still love me? There was a yes/no box, but there was no yes/no box, but instead it asked if I wanted to record or check mic options. I knew my DS microphone was fine, so I pressed record and took a deep breath. Jessica, I'm really sorry for what I did to you. I wish I could reverse what I put you through. I should have never forgotten. You're not just a bunch of pixels, but a being just like me. I'm really sorry. I promise I'll never do it again. Ever. I'll be more careful. I'll never restart a Pokemon game. Ever. All I want. I took a soft breath and finally let out the last words. Is your forgiveness for my stupidity. But I still do love you, Jessica. The picture of Jessica on screen nodded and faded out. The overworld returned and Jessica appeared again as a Raichu sprite. This time, however, Black spun around in a circle and a small Pokeball flew from his hand. A flash of white light engulfed Jessica and the ball closed. Black moved forward to pick it up. A new text box appeared. Thank you, Cameron. You really do remember. I smiled at the screen, and as I did, Sharon, Belle, In, and Alder all walked up to Black and surrounded him. The screen faded out, and Black reappeared in front of the bell. He rang the bell, and the usual message appeared instead of what normally happens. However, Black walked away from the bell, and the screen still focused on it. As it faded out, I saw a few ghost silhouettes: a Charizard, a Blastoise, a Venusaur, a Sandslash, a Dragonite. All my old Pokemon Yellow team had been laid to rest in Celestial Tower, never returning, but never being forgotten. The screen blacked out and returned to Mystralian City. A message popped up saying the game had been saved. I checked my Pokemon and saw Jessica in my sixth slot. Opening her page, a few waves of nostalgia comfort and greeted me, and my two other voices as we looked at the screen. Greeting us was a level 100 Raichu, modest nature, female, with the nickname Jessica, and OT as Cam, which was my Pokemon Yellow character name. Moving to the move selection, I saw her stats were exactly how I left them in Yellow, and her moveset was exactly the same as her old Yellow moveset. Thunderbolt, Double Team, Submission, and Surf. I smiled broadly. She had forgiven me and decided to join me again. As I pressed B to leave the page, one final message popped up. A large but this time, there was no cuts or internal organs shown. It was just shown a smiling face of a healthy Raichu beaming at the screen. A message box had popped up as Raichu's mouth moved as it were saying words. Thank you, Cameron, for taking me back. Oh, by the way, the screen changed briefly. The picture now had one paw up. I saw something that made my eyes widen. No matter how anyone would prove this otherwise, this was no Joker hack. In her paw sat the final missing piece to my Pokemon Yellow cartridge. I never truly forgot you either. Jessica. The story by Reginnator.